Hello. Today we'll be going through one of our conversion utilities called Talend to DBT. We'll be taking a Talend job and running it through one of our connector services that will assess the Talend jobs and metadata, then later on do a conversion from Talend to DBT, as well as help with documentation of the Talend job as well, all within Adept. The requirements for this job to execute would be talend.item file, a talend.properties file, and an optional Talend generated documentation, which is what runs as this part of the step here. The expected output would be lineage and assessment with reports and dashboards within Adept, a DBT converted .SQL file that would map one-to-one or directly to the Talend job that's supposed to be converted. And then the hosted Talend, you get a hosted Talend document site. So that allows you to host any of those Talend generated documents all within Adept. They become shareable and also become accessible to the developers or the migration operators that are handling a specific task. I'm going to go over to the tasks section on Adept. I'd already created a task for us, so this one allows us to run a conversion using Talend. So I'm going to just provide these three files that we had mentioned as prerequisites. So I'm going to provide a talend.item file. I'll take this .item file, and I'll take a .properties file, and then I'll upload a optional Talend document, which is here, and then we'll go ahead and kick off that run. I'm going to pause the video here and just wait for the job to complete. What's going to happen here is you'll see there's 3 stages set here. One is to do that initial assessment, as we saw in the pipeline picture before. After that is done, it will execute these 591 and 592, which is basically doing the conversion of Talend to DBT and taking that Talend documentation. Maybe in the meantime, what I can do is I can show the job that we are trying to access, or rather get the documentation for. So here's the .html file that you usually get from Talend. This is the job. It basically has about 4 TDB input jobs here. They're all going through a union. There's a T-map here, so that allows Talend developers usually to do a transformation. There's some aggregation, they're filtering out a few things, and then writing the output to a file. Typically with DBT, with a conversion like this, something that has a file output like this, it's going to translate into a table on the data warehouse side. But what we're expecting is once the job is complete, all of these metadata. So this is like TDB input 1, which is MCA view sales, direct sales, sell in Europe. You can see some of the metadata that comes from the documentation, right? The schema, and here's a query that's basically going into that TDB input. And it's going to be the same case. Which one is this? This is a TDB input 2. And here will be a query, right? Let's look at that union real quick. That T-union. T-unite. Ideally, this T-unite is doing a union. And here's your inputs, TDB1, 3, 4, and TT2, 3, 4, and 1. Right? And then there's your T-out, T-map 1. So switching back to my job here, let's see if anything's done. Okay, good. So this is done. It took about, little less than 2 minutes to run all the 3 stages. So that includes assessment. Assessment comes with graph import. So there are graph elements, about 116 nodes and 200 relationships are extracted from the metadata from that job. Here's the documentation job and here's the conversion job. Let's just look at what was produced by the job. So one of the things we mentioned were dashboards. So coming out here, I have a nice view of out of the Adept platform. Once the jobs are complete and successful, we do get dashboards that give us a high level overview of what are we trying to actually work with. So from the Talend side, I can see it's one job. It has 9 components, 16 variables. There's one context environment, 0 databases found there, but 2 tables found within the metadata, 87 columns, 0 files. All right, good. And you get a little bit of a lineage as well. So you can kind of see how things are tied. So here's the job. You can see there's TDB input 3, TUnite 1, and some of those columns as well. There's other elements or other parts of the platform that allow you to go through a deeper dive into the lineage. There's a lineage tab here. And this one. So again, this is a lineage out of Adept. You do get a tab there once the job is complete. And this one allows you to traverse and look at all the metadata that are within the Talend job and visual representation. So it's all through lineage. We are able to go down to column, and I want to just show you that. So what is this context? Cool. See. So everything becomes accessible to anybody that's accessing Adept. All the metadata. So I just want to pull some of these random nodes in here. So you can see these are context variables. Let's see if we can look at any component. I want to just focus maybe on TDB input 1, which is this guy. Let's bring that in. Here's TDB input 1. Okay. And we can see that, you know, there's other relationships down. I can look at the columns that are available in that component. So here are the columns. And as I mentioned, we do have column to column lineage as well within that we can extract from the Talend job as well. So that means if I have columns, because the Talend does have the concept of schemas within components that get passed. We do track that in case there's any transformation. Sometimes you're going from lowercase currency maybe to lowercase currency. We can see that through the DBT lineage. Here I can see which component goes back to that goes into the TUnite. So here I can tell that from TDB input 1, that connects to TUnite. So I can tell from component to component lineage and column to column. So I can see that from that TDB input 1, there's a column called currency, which also gets outputted from to TUnite. We should be able to trace this column down as well to, let's see, if it goes down to maybe the T-map. These are the components as well. Now, this lineage is what allows us to proceed with any type of automation, any conversion, because this extracts all the metadata down to the lineage, and then the same lineage and metadata is what we'll understand and convert over to DBT. This is just a little bit about the lineage that becomes accessible from Adept. We've already looked at status and the logs, and then for input and output files, one of the things that we are availing is based on the stages. I want to just focus on the conversion since we just looked at the dashboard. So on the conversion side, these were the 2 files that were used up in that stage within Adept. It's the .item file and the .properties file. Looking at the output file, there's a DBT folder there that gets created and a project folder with the name of the job that we just translated. This is what we end up with as the conversion of that Talend job over to DBT. Every component that we find within Talend, each of these components within a canvas, we do convert each of those into a CTE. So you'll see each of these components defined as a CTE. There are certain components that do not map directly to a SQL equivalent or a CTE. However, every component during the automation will get a CTE. Any component that may not have been automated, or we cannot find a one-to-one mapping to maybe a SQL translation within a CTE, you'll find a commented CTE within that job. This is a nice and straightforward job where you're having, you know, tables and, you know, just it's basically an ELT job. So it fits very nicely. It'll go for the conversion, it'll cover most of that totally fine. But what we've done with the automation is, in case there's components that just don't make sense, they can't be converted over, we will bring in that metadata and you'll find that CTE basically commented out. Those portions we do handle as part of the last mile effort. Now, looking at this CTE, we do set up a base config. We can extend those. This one allows us to, change materialization tags. Of course, we can add things like schemas and tables, or rather the alias, and whatnot. So right now we have those configs just set with the 2. We can keep expanding that if desired. And then here's all the components defined as CTEs. I want to focus on TDB input 1. That's the component that we had looked at over here. And I'm assuming it's this guy, TDB input 1. Yes. So this is the one that has this query. All right. Looking like it's looking for this. I want to see there's this list that it's doing off of. Z3, all of that. So here's TDB input 1, CTE represented from Talend over to a CTE with DBT project. There are certain things that we have taken the liberty of understanding and converting over to macros, or either we use pure DB capabilities, things like references, sourcing, we're using variables. So from the metadata you saw, we're trying to understand what are the variables that are going into a job. Also within the components, there are variables, global variables that may be defined as well. During the conversion, we're trying to understand that, and then as we're generating the SQL, replacing where necessary. There are places where a developer may have used Talend expressions or routines. We've taken the liberty of taking those routines and creating macros for Talend. So anytime we run across, maybe a developer used format date within an expression anywhere within a Talend job, in a TMAP or any component, that logic gets replaced with this macro as part of that SQL conversion as well. Let me just scroll down. Here's the TUnite. So every component becomes a CTE. And if I come down to the TUnite, you will see it actually now doing a union of all the 4 CTEs, which is basically the 4 TDB inputs that we are getting here from Talend. So this is your TUnite. Basically just doing a union when we translate that to SQL within a SQL, and then, there's your CTE. Your TMAP, a TMAP basically is trying to, allows you to have a main table and however many lookup tables that you desire. You can have multiple output tables. In this example, looks like there's just one output table that is looking for quantity greater than 0. So this CTE, you'll see it actually trying to reuse what just came out of the TUnite. Because if you look at the lineage, in my TMAP, here's your TUnite, right? So whatever is going in the TMAP gets fed off of the TUnite. So again, here we're just calling that CTE. Going down to the T aggregate, which again, T aggregate is just going to use what came from the TMAP, and so on and so forth. Here's your T filter. Your T filter basically from Talend is this component here, the T filter row 4. And here you will typically see this is the condition that filter is working on off of. There's the operator. It's greater than or equal to, and it's using a column called gross sales quantity. It has to be greater than. On the right side of the value, it's 0. Let's see what that conversion actually did for us. Yeah, it's taking, of course, from the CTE, the values coming off of the T aggregate row, selecting everything, but filtering on gross sales quantity greater than 0. And then we have your T file output delimited. That file, that output file, naturally it has to be converted to a table for us. So when we run through our DBT model, you will not get a file as an output. Instead, you're going to get a table built within your data warehouse. And of course, there's a final CTE that calls from that T file output delimited one, and we always do the select star from final CTE. This is the conversion portion that gets executed as part of the stages. Every stage has output files as well, whether you're looking at your assessment, what gives you the lineage, is your graph data. So all the nodes metadata is sitting here, the relationships are sitting here as well, and it's all searchable throughout the platform. Going out to the documentation side of this utility or connector, The input file is that zip file that we uploaded at the start of the job. When you generate Talend documentation, Talend will give you the documentation as a zip file. That same zip file is what we're taking in as an optional input into Adept for this connector to run. We do recommend that we do get the documentation along with all the jobs that need to be converted. Talend allows you to do that, for the entire project if you desire. The reason for that is within Adept, we would like to have a one-to-one comparison, right? So I already know I have the converted SQL that's sitting out here, and to group that with the original job, this reporting tab here allows the developers as well to access the same documentation that would have been accessed locally as a HTML. We're using Adept to host that HTML file as well, so you can kind of group your conversion jobs as well as look at the original job. So these ones help the developers with validating as well as trying to go through the last mile conversion, because not everything will be converted. In some cases, the automation may not handle everything as smoothly. There's components that just cannot translate to SQL. There's something like a pre-job or a post-job in Talend. All it does is just basically just sets this is the start of the job, this is the end of the job. Something like that wouldn't have a SQL equivalent, so we would comment that out. As part of the last mile conversion, the developer may go out and start cleaning up some of those SQLs. There's some things that the automation may miss or misalign. So we always have that phase. The automation today promises to cover about 80% of the conversion. And then we have that 20% as the last mile conversion as a service, just to make sure that everything has been converted, the models can run, and maybe in some cases, consolidating some of these SQLs and putting them into a nice, workable DBT project. That is all I have for this demo. Do let me know if there's anything else that we can provide. Oh, there's a conversion tab here. This conversion allows us to see from a conversion. My apologies, I should have shown this. This allows us to show from the Talend side what are we finding as far as metadata if we have to go to DBT. Again, we're promising 80% conversion there, so that's the highest that we can reach today. The warehouse that we could find out of the Talend metadata is basically Snowflake. It can find a database called DSDBT. It found 2 tables, 87 columns, 1 job, 9 components, one model that gets created from this one Talend job, 9 components, but we do end up with 10 CTEs. Of course, it's 9. It will be 9 for each of the components, of course, plus the final CTE that we always use. 0 files found, and ideally files. If we do find files in Talend, we will map those out to seeds within DBT. Thank you for your time.